This week's show brought to you by Phoenix and Philadelphia. If you want to see some ugly ball, no one else is better. Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. Man, we have had an action-packed week of news in the NBA. And candidly, we're not going to talk too much. I got two topics tonight. I got the All-Star game and David Blatt being ousted in Cleveland. I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, a.k.a. Nerd Numbers. And with me this week, our esteemed producer, the voice of God himself, Brian Foster. Say hey, Brian.
How's it going, Dre? Show a 101. We're back to the NBA. It'll be fun.
I feel bad. If you recall at the start of the season, I came up with a column idea called like Stats 101, and my theory was I was going to come up with like a stats concept every 2 weeks and like write about it. And it was kind of fun, but it just wasn't as fun as like talking real sports, if that makes sense. I got more into like finding my top 10 box scores that I enjoy and stuff like that. So I feel bad. It was like an off-season idea where I was like, to have an idea for a column every week, I'm going to do Stats 101. I'm going to explain stats. And then once the regular season went going, I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to talk about how, DeMarcus Cousins got, 50 points, or how Andre Drummond got 20 rebounds and somehow missed 20 free throws in the same game or whatever. So, yeah, so I didn't even have anything 101 planned for this show.
Oh, we do have a little bit planned later. We'll get into it.
So I want to, before we even get going on anything, Brian, you gave me the perfect opportunity to get a bicker topic in. And so to keep you apprised of what's coming, we're going to talk David Blatt in the All-Star game. That's pretty much it. Then we've got a few other nitpicky topics before that. I call this bicker theater, I guess. I don't know what you put it in the script. But before the show, Brian and I were talking a little bit about the Royal Rumble last night. And Brian said the dreaded words you never want to hear if you want to talk about something, which is, I haven't seen it. Please don't spoil it yet. So obviously we're not going to talk the Royal Rumble. Dear listeners, those of you that maybe don't like it when I go off on wrestling, you luck out. But I wanted to talk spoiler territory and just ask on the statute of limitations. I feel for sporting events, and I would include WWE in that kind of, that basically you get a day. You get 1 day to not know the results, the outcomes, right? If you were listening to this show and don't want me to spoil the Phoenix-Philadelphia game, spoiler, it was an ugly game. I'm not going to tell you who won, though. I'm not going to do that on the show because that's happening right now. But a day later, if tomorrow Brian and I are talking and Brian says, hey, don't ruin the Phoenix game for me, it's too late. It's been a day. It's been a day since the Royal Rumble. Dear listener, if any of you are in the chat room, I'll try and check in a bit. What do you think? Does Brian have any justification for saying don't spoil the Royal Rumble for me a day after it happened? And that means you had to have been avoiding Twitter, Brian, because myself and Arturo were talking the Royal Rumble like mad after it ended.
Well, okay, here's my first reply. I don't think that I necessarily have any moral high ground here, or I'd be appalled if you spoiled anything. I think you do have the right to. So really, I'm just kind of begging you not to. It's more of like a plea.
All right, that's fair. Okay. But I'm going to, like, on a sports show, which you produce once a week, I'm going to give you, like, this is like you showing up to class without your homework, especially you knowing how much I talk about wrestling. I will just say Dean Ambrose remains one of my favorite wrestlers, mainly in part because I
did watch that match. And
he was in the Royal Rumble as well, so you should check it out for that. But I was just going to say, mainly in part because I've met him in person once, and he was kind of nice. So that's pretty much the long and short of that. So, yeah, for those of you watching that have seen the Royal Rumble, just know that Dean Ambrose is one of my favorite people in the WWE, and we'll leave it at that. All right, Brian, I'm a little regretful. Or actually, no, we'll do that third. We're going to talk a little bit about last week's show as our third topic. I came up with a topic called small sample size theater, one of our favorites. And there are two things that are going to fit under this week. Sorry, I just realized you shouldn't do the two, right? Because in various other countries, it's flipping them off. So sorry about that. If you're watching this live, I just tried to hold up my fingers as two and might have been profane. Anyway. The two topics are DeMarcus Cousins and the Golden State Warriors. So let's start with DeMarcus Cousins, who I gave him a top box score of the week last week. That's my weekly column. I do a top 10 box scores to start the week. And he scored 48 points in this amazing game. And I made a snippy comment. I was like, he could have gotten to 50, except he was bad from free throws that game. To be fair, I think he got beat up a few times. Like he was holding his ankle at one point after one free throw. So to be fair, I think he did get beat up that game and his free throws might have been off as a result. But, regardless, he was playing out of his mind. Game after that, double overtime game, cracks 50. And oh my goodness. And DeMarcus Cousins is playing well, and this has drawn me the ire of a few of my friends that know, in passing, I basically have called DeMarcus Cousins not really a star. And to break this down, the key reasons are his shooting efficiency isn't that great. Even this season, even after this absurd run he's been on, his true shooting efficiency, which takes into account free throws, three-pointers, etc., is 55.1%, which is good. If we were calling that a full team, that is essentially the Houston Rockets. So on his own, DeMarcus Cousins is shooting about as well as a team. So that includes James Harden, but it also includes the bad bench players and all the backups for Dwight Howard this season. The Houston Rockets are shooting this season. And that's good, but, compare that to, say, Steph Curry, who's, touched 70 a few times this season, right? He's been really close to 70% true shooting. It's just shooting out of his mind. Or even James Harden, or past greats like Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and LeBron James and Kevin Durant, who have all exceeded 60% true shooting. It's just not in the same ballpark. Additionally, he is absurd at, people say defense. So, I give no disagreement to that. He does seem to be a good defender, very good at rebounds, very good at blocks, but his fouls are also really high. His turnovers are really high. And, this is also a guy that gets teed up regularly. So my basic point on DeMarcus Cousins is he's got all the talent in the world. This was basically the Westbrook argument I've had, which means, by the way, DeMarcus Cousins is the same boat Westbrook was in. I basically said Westbrook was a good, not great player with all the talent in the world that made a lot of bad decisions. And in response to this, Russell Westbrook went off and turned into a triple-double machine. So what do I know? DeMarcus Cousins is the same boat. So maybe, by the way, DeMarcus Cousins has turned a corner. Maybe DeMarcus Cousins is turning into that star. One of the theories I've seen that I've kind of enjoyed is him getting along with Rajon Rondo. There's a great Coach Rondo clip of Rajon Rondo yelling at DeMarcus Cousins where he needs to be on defense. So maybe there's synergy there or something. That said, the reason I put this under small sample size theater is the one word I want everybody to remember whenever you come at me with, can you believe you're insulting Westbrook? Or do you really think Cousins is overrated? Or do you really think Kobe is overrated? Or do you really think Melo's not a star? Is Linsanity. There was a point in NBA history where Jeremy Lin, he has been starting for the Charlotte Bobcats, or is it Hornets? What are they? Is it Bobcats or Hornets? I always get this confused, Brian.
He's on the Charlotte Hornets this season, yeah.
It is correct. Hornets. They change.
He's backing up Kemba Walker.
Charlotte, New Orleans, I hate you so much for what you have done to the history of NBA names. Just so we're clear. I hate Charlotte, New Orleans, all the name switches, all that. The Pelicans, the Hornets, the Bobcats, the Jazz. Yes, they're included. I hate it. Anyway, sorry. He's basically the third string guard that's been getting starting minutes because of injury on that team. But there was a point where people were calling him the next Jordan because he had a 7-game stretch, and 7 games is a couple of weeks. So be aware of that. So that's the only thing I want people to be cognizant of is maybe DeMarcus Cousins has turned a corner. But as you pointed out in the pre-show to me, Brian, he is still, by our numbers, below average. According to points over par, he is essentially, even including this string of great games, this is going to get us some flack, I am aware, but even according to all of those numbers, he is still below average.
For the whole season, right, in total.
For the whole season. That's including the start of the season, so he probably had some bad games there. It's also worth noting, this is something I always have fun with, is everybody claims he's a great defender. I'm not discounting that, but we were kind of talking this with Kevin Love on last week's show. We didn't get a chance to finish it because the great Jenny Busek came on the show. We'll talk that a little more in a second, and I definitely want to talk more of that. But in regards to defense, the Kings are 20th in the NBA in defense. So I'm not saying DeMarcus Cousins is bad at defense. I'm saying I think people overestimate the impact individual players can have on team defense. And by that, what I mean when I say team defense is basically altering opponent shooting efficiency. Because we have numbers for steals, we have numbers for blocks, we have numbers for rebounds. And as Patrick pointed out, if you're Kevin Love and you're not that great at shot blocking, but you are really good at boxing out on defense, your goal should be to box out. And it's worth noting, if you box out a player, that means you're between them and the hoop, which is the goal on defense. So, you know, I've heard the argument with like Marcus Camby, and this might be true, that he cheated on defense to get extra blocks. And that's believable, because something you can do on defense is, you know, you cheat off your man, the other guy shoots, you come out of nowhere, you come on their blind side and you swat the ball. You get a block, which seems good, but you did that basically by leaving your guy open, which is in theory bad. On rebounding, though, if you jump over a person after the ball's up, you're really at risk at an over-the-back foul. So usually if you're going to be good at rebounding, it means you're good at boxing out, and that means you're between you and someone from the hoop, which I argue is good defense. So sorry, long tangent on defense. All I'm saying is, even for the people that are like, but his defense, the Kings have crappy defense. So I don't know what to tell you there. If your argument is, well, they'd have really, really, really bad defense, maybe so, but he's not pulling them into a top half defense team. He's pulling them into a not bottom 5 defense team.
And we've talked about this with Allen Iverson too on the show before, right? That he was thought to, his steals were, he gambled on them, so they weren't as good as regular steals. But my thing on that, and Camby, is always, well, let's say he gambles and he gives up a little bit more. You know, what is he doing? Giving up a few more percentage points higher of a shot by leaving his guy. A block or a steal is a full possession, and that's got to be worth way more than what he gives up for gambling.
I agree that if we were to break down the numbers, we might see more that would indicate that. And we're starting to get that, by the way, with sports view.
Yeah.
So I'm not taking away from people that say that. It's just, it's the key word we always say, Brian, is magnitude. If you don't sell me on the magnitude, then I don't care if you tell me a player is really good at X or really bad at X. And, you know, one thing that I'll get one of my comments in that I've had kind of rumbling in the back of my head for a while is people that say they hate one number systems. Well, that just proves they don't understand math, because using things like addition and multiplication, you can add multiple numbers together. So an aggregate is a combination of multiple numbers. So it's not like the wins produced stat or the points over par stat is just this one black box number like adjusted plus minus or RAPM or RPM. You know, we can actually see why we think a player holistically is good or bad at stuff. And so my opinion on DeMarcus Cousins is, even if you give him a defense boost, even if you consider him the best defender, if you consider, I've done this in past, I recall, if you think that DeMarcus Cousins has the best defense, like the same as the best defensive team in the NBA, he's still only slightly above average this season, and that's with this absurd tear he's on. So all I'm saying is, don't overreact. Now, at the same time, he's a younger player. He's clearly got a high ceiling, so if you're the Kings fans, maybe have some hope. You can see I'm just waffling back and forth in it. That's going to bring us to our next short, small sample theater topic, don't overreact. And Brian, I want to sell you out to all your Warriors fans.
Okay, well, I want to finish up on Cousins real fast.
Okay, you're going to finish up.
Yeah.
Brian is trying to duck getting shot at by me, which is going to happen very shortly about the Warriors. All right, I'll let you get the
I'm wearing my Jim Barnett shirt tonight, Dre, and quite frankly, the Warriors are playing great right now. So I'm not going to completely sell them out. But yeah, so I've got DeMarcus Cousins' game log up on BoxscoreGeeks.com right now. And yeah, what you're saying is right. If you look at the magnitude, he has had a lot of good games lately. Points over par, how much he adds, you know, to his team's margin versus an average player. He's up in like the 10 to 15.
Versus an average big. I want to say
right,
versus an
good
average
point.
big. That is key.
But he's been up in the 10 to 15 point range, and he has not had any bad games recently, so he's been playing great. But that's counteracted by, you see down here, like in December, he was stinking it up in December, had some big like -4, -5 games, and yeah, I mean, the big thing is he takes a lot of shots, right? So even though he does these good things on defense we can measure, he gets a ton of rebounds, he blocks shots, he steals, that's all great. You know, he still is 50, 60% true shooting, even on these really good games. So, yeah, if I was, you know, advising DeMarcus Cousins, which, you know, that probably is a bad idea for him, but I would say you need to try to play like DeAndre Jordan or Ben Wallace. You shouldn't be trying to play like Hakeem Olajuwon or Patrick Ewing. That's just not your strength. Stick to that defense. Your offense blows. Sorry, Cousins.
I'm going to throw out another just random. This is a nice set of topics to just throw out some like random mumblings in the back of my head that aren't enough for a full post and are like the perfect link where they're too long for a tweet, not long enough for a post, if that makes sense, Brian. Dwayne Wade has been injured this season, and oh my goodness, the Heat have just been decimated by injury. And so last week, Dwayne Wade, much to the dismay of daily fantasy sports players, decided to play a game where he was supposed to be out because of injury. And after, he basically said he doesn't have time to wait around to heal up with how his team is doing. Now, the thought I'm sure that Wade has is my team needs me. And I feel that this is a very common problem in sports, particularly the NBA, which is we often insult chuckers and we often insult like high volume players like Kobe and DeMarcus Cousins and Carmelo Anthony and Allen Iverson. To Iverson's point, which is ironic, is if we look at his defensive numbers, his steals, his rebounds, his fouls, I believe he was quite good at that. I think Allen Iverson might have been an amazing defender, especially given his size. And then basically he just ate that all on the offense where he shot below average for a shooting guard, which is horrible. Like if you're going to have a below average shot, you want a below average big shot, meaning like a big shooting 55% near the hoop is way better than a perimeter shooter shooting 48% from mid range. But, so Allen Iverson, though, he didn't think he was hurting his team when he took a shot. DeMarcus Cousins doesn't think he's hurting his team take a shot. DeMarcus Cousins, when he gets riled up, doesn't think he's hurting his team getting texts. But these things matter. And Dwayne Wade, when he goes back in the game injured and doesn't play well because he played horrendously in some of these injured games, doesn't think he's hurting his team. And that's the hard part is if players do these things and you say, stop it, they'll look at you like you're crazy. I mean, we still get this right. Even with the advanced stats, that was the article I wrote, I think, 2 weeks back, where I was talking about my despondency at the state of advanced stats, and I said it just baffles me how none of the Moneyball stuff caught on. So many of these simple ideas of shooting efficiency, importance of possessions, etc., just don't catch on, and I think that still pervades to the player. That's been one of the themes you've been doing a lot lately, Brian, is if the young players don't learn how to shoot threes, then you can't expect them to be good at threes when they get the NBA. If the young players think that being a player like Kobe is helping their team, then when they hit the NBA, they're going to be really baffled when you say, stop trying to be the only person taking all the shots.
And this is a great segue to talking about the Spurs and the Warriors, because those are the two teams that have really gotten past this ego and macho-driven kind of thing you're talking about. They don't play when they're hurt. They rest their players a lot more. Look how much better they play because of it. Like, they're just so smart. And for some reason, even though those teams have been winning so much, no one else picks up on it. I guess, it's slow change is the way it goes in the NBA.
Here's what I love. So sorry, because we're going to talk a little bit about the Kings and the Warriors and if you should overreact. And I'll save you the guillotine a little longer, Brian. But, the Spurs, for the longest time, their edge has been Tim Duncan and David Robinson. Because you point at the Spurs and you say, look, that team is moneyballing it. That team is getting underrated talent in the draft. That team is finding efficient ways, right? They're taking corner threes or maximizing defense or whatever. And everybody looks at you and just goes, they got David Robinson. You got to tank. You got to get a number one pick. They got David Robinson. They got Tim Duncan. That's why they're winning. And, now Kawhi, if it weren't for Steph Curry, we would be talking about how Kawhi is like the best player in a generation. Like Curry to me is so unfair. I mean, Curry is like, I equate him to Michael Jordan or even Babe Ruth. I'm going to talk Curry and Babe Ruth in a second. But, it's just not fair that you have this transcendent player in front of these other players. And like Michael Jordan did that.
Curry was the MVP last year, and he might be the most improved player this year. That's how good he is.
That is not true, but he is really, really
He's
good.
In the conversation.
I'll give you. He's in the conversation. Like, I was looking at this, and so here's the crazy note. In the history of the NBA, only two players, I'm going to ask you, I think I tweeted this, Brian, so I'll see if you're paying attention. Only two players have scored over 40% from three and also taken over 600 threes in a season. Do you know who the two are?
No, but I'm going to try to look at your Twitter account to find out.
You're cheating. All right, well, what? You should know one. Come on.
Okay, well, I guess we're talking about Steph Curry.
Steph Curry and Ray Allen. Ray Allen.
Oh, that makes sense.
Makes sense. But Ray Allen did it once. Steph Curry is on pace to do it 4 consecutive seasons. Now, Steph Curry also holds the record for three-pointers in a season. I believe it's like 658, somewhere around there, or three-point attempts in a season, and, of course, three-point makes. So I think it's somewhere in the 200s for the makes and over 600 for the attempts. He is on pace, if he plays 80 games this season and keeps shooting as many threes as he's shooting a game, to crack 800 three-pointers attempted in a season, which is absurd. That is, that is Babe Ruth like in the fact that if the old record is 650 and he does 800, that is I
Yeah.
don't know what to say about that.
No, it's right. Babe Ruth's a great. Wow, that's a really great analogy because Babe Ruth was known for changing baseball to become from a speed game to a power game, right? Well, that's what Curry's doing. He's just changing the way the game's played.
Well, I'm curious about that because Michael Jordan's a good example where the fact that people can't differentiate between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant to me showed that people didn't get why Michael Jordan was great. Because it wasn't that Michael Jordan was shooting 30 shots a game, it was that he was shooting 30 shots a game and connecting on over 60% of them out of a guard. That was the
and rebounding and getting assists and getting steals. He did everything.
Exactly. I mean, I think he really should have done this in '89 as well. But Michael Jordan's Defensive Player of the Year and MVP in 1988, I believe, is one of the most ridiculous seasons. And I argue that wasn't his best season. I believe, I'll look up the numbers maybe. I believe '89 was his best season, but his team regressed a little, and as a result, he didn't get the same award push. But regardless, yeah, I mean, you're saying Steph Curry's changed the game. It'll be interesting to see how much teams catch on because, when I started talking about I've talked about the Warriors and said the Warriors prove you don't need to tank. And people responded, well, they have first round pick. They have number 1 draft picks on the team. They have Andrew Bogut. Andrew Bogut doesn't count. I basically said, Steph Curry and Draymond Green are both players that weren't, Steph Curry wasn't a top 5 and Draymond Green wasn't a first rounder. And people say, well, Steph Curry would have been a top 3. It was just a weird draft, or David Kahn, was foolish, or whatever. And it's funny to watch people where you look at them point blank and say, the importance of the NBA is shooting efficiency. The best player that understands this is on the Warriors. That player was not identified by the system, which means to win at basketball, it is possible you don't need the traditional method of a top 5 pick that, just shoots a lot, not efficiently. And people will look at you and still say, no, you're wrong, which I find remarkable.
Yeah, and we've got Jordan's career stats up right now. And it looks like 88-89 was his best season by quite a bit. He went crazy with the rebounds and assists that year.
All right, so guillotine time. The actual topic I wanted to talk, small sample size theater. Your Warriors, and I believe a friend of the show, Jeremy Britton, was at the game. I'm so jealous.
Oh, good job, Jeremy.
Your Warriors blew out the Spurs, who everybody was starting to say, best team in the NBA, point differential is better, the Warriors looking good, but the Spurs are better. Blew them out by 30. And after seeing this happen, Brian, you had the most non-fan response, especially given that you are a Warriors fan. Your thoughts were?
The Spurs' point margin is still better. And this is, again, are the Warriors playing the best in the league right now? Blowing out these 2 good East Conference teams, the Bulls and the Cavs, and the best team in the West, the Spurs, by 30. Yeah, they're probably been playing the best ball the last week or so. But, again, if you look at the whole season, they're still behind the Spurs in point margin. So this is where we get to the Stats 101, right? We're going to bring up Basketball Reference season summary. And other miscellaneous stats, they have margin of victory. And here we see the Spurs are at 13.51. The Warriors are at 12.5. They're still a full point ahead of them in margin of victory. Okay,
and what's the SRS, though? And so
that's
SRS,
okay, that's what I'm getting to. So then you say, well, and this is an argument people say on Twitter a lot, the Spurs have had a weaker schedule. That's true. Again, according to Basketball Reference, the Spurs have a negative 1.3 points based on their weak schedule. The Warriors have also had a somewhat weaker than average schedule, but that's only negative 0.8. So then when you look at SRS, like you said, Dre, simple rating system, it gets a little closer. It's 12.15 to 11.72. They're in a virtual dead heat, but the Spurs are still a little bit ahead. So just because the Spurs got blown out in a road game, they shouldn't be considered way worse than the Warriors. Would things have been different if Duncan was healthy and the Spurs were at home, So let's not jump to too many conclusions until we're in the playoffs, is all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I think that is why we use the term small sample size theater, because, we see all these people that react to, oh, this player just had an absurd game, or, oh, this player just did this. And, our tendency is to say it proves something. And the reality in sports, this is somewhat obnoxious, is one game never proves anything. And the advantage we have in basketball is we have an 82-game season in players' careers, unlike football where they just destroy their bodies so quickly. Basketball players, we usually get about 5 years of a player. 6, I believe, is the average career length. So
The
we
Brocado
get
prime, right, Dre?
okay. So we'll explain two things. Sorry about this tangent. An average NBA player's career, according to a study done a few years back by a great blog, I think it's called Exploring NBA. The author's name is Vilku. I hasn't posted in a while, which makes me sad because I really like the blog. Said that the average career NBA length was about 6 seasons. This should be updated because this kind of goes up and down regards to health, one and done, all that jazz. But that's what he had found. The Brocado Prime is taking the same idea, which is to say, when we're trying to compare two players, say Kobe Bryant to Michael Jordan, one issue we run into is the idea of longevity versus like peak. And another issue that comes with that is if we compare Michael Jordan in 1998 to Steph Curry now, that is, of course, absurd. We've got Steph Curry in his prime against Michael Jordan, mid-30s, running on fumes. But if we look at Michael Jordan's numbers in 1998, he was a far cry from himself. And, that was like his last hurrah. He retired at the right time in 1998. Really shouldn't have come back. But regardless. So what a good method we've come up with is a Brocado Prime, which is you take the 6 best seasons in a player's career. It's named after James Brocado, who used it on the Wages of Wins blog back in the day. Take the 6 best seasons in a player's career, and that helps adjust for things like if a player gets injured mid-season, middle of their career, but still puts up 6 good years, or if there's a lockout, stuff like that. So that's the number you're talking there. But to that point, we actually have a Brocado Prime for like every single starter in the NBA that doesn't lose their career to an injury. And as a result, we can say a lot there. But to the point you're making, one game doesn't show anything. Now, that said, the Warriors and the Spurs are close enough in SRS.
Yeah.
And based on the most recent game, and just based on the fact that the Warriors, I can't believe I'm being the Warriors fan to you. Based on the fact that Curry was injured a couple games, Clay was out injured, Harrison Barnes was out injured, and they're all back healthy, I gotta side with the Warriors right now.
Yeah, sure. Right now, I mean, again, for the season, they're pretty much in a dead heat with the Spurs slightly ahead. Right now, they're playing better, so sure, we can go with the Warriors. I'm just saying, yeah, yesterday does not prove the Warriors are clearly better than the Spurs. I'm seeing all kind of posts like the Spurs have been exposed, they're too old and slow to guard the Warriors, and come on. It's the only thing it proved to me is how hard it is to win on the road in the NBA, even if you're an all-time great team. So here's another link I have. This is an article from Beyond the Spread. I have no clue where that is. This is just some of the all-time great teams and their point margins, not adjusted for schedule. It's really hard to get over 10-point margin in the NBA. It's almost never happened, only a few times. The fact that both the Warriors and Spurs are way above it right now, again, not a full season, but they're both all-time great teams, I think we can say at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. We're only halfway through the season. We've talked on this show a lot about how things like injuries matter, trades matter, etc. So who's to say? But yeah, right now, this point in the season, both those teams are all-time greats. All right, I want to just give a little bit more throwback to last week's show. If you haven't listened to it, make sure you do. It's the Storm head coach Jenny Busek was on, and she just, she was one of the savviest guests we've had, most accomplished. If I was going to give one regret to last week's show, Brian, is we did not talk her up enough in the introduction.
Yeah.
She was named the best player in Iceland. I put that in the show notes. The best player in Iceland, like of an entire country. Anyway, sorry. Regardless, one of our most accomplished coaches on the show. That's weird to say. Or I guess Patrick's a coach. So yeah, I don't think Patrick will take any offense to being told he is a less accomplished coach than Jenny Busek. But listen to that show if you haven't. Lots of great stuff on the NBA, about analytics, about how to sell to your team, about how players train impacts how they're going to shoot threes. Just, wanted to give some love out to that. I actually want to talk a little bit more about it, but as Patrick's not here, Jenny's not here, and we went long on small sample size theater, I'm going to let it go and just say, listen to the show. Anything else to add on that, Brian?
I really loved the question you asked. I think I got a really good answer out of her. So I'm glad you contributed that. And watch the show.
If we're about to talk coaches, so Brian is essentially the coach of the Boxscore Geeks show at this point. He's the producer. And what I will say is on that show, I had to run early. I felt really bad. And I would have on the show said, sorry, I have to go, except Jenny and Patrick were having such a good dialogue. I was like, I'm not interrupting this. me interrupting this just hurts a fantastic dialogue. I'm just going to leave. But I actually told Brian I didn't really want to be on the show because, I had busy stuff and I didn't want to talk too much because I wanted to make sure Patrick and Jenny got most of the talking. But, it's kind of like when a coach makes sure a bench player gets to play in a game that's a blowout just to make sure they're there. So I appreciate that because it was show 100 and Brian was basically like, I want you in show 100, Dre. So that's why I was on the show last week. All right, talking about coaches and getting along and their players respecting them. David Blatt got fired last week as head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Was replaced by Tyronn Lue. One of my favorite stats I discovered this week is Tyronn Lue is one of the few players that was blocked in the illustrious career by Earl Boykins. 5'5", 135 pound, played for the Denver Nuggets. Earl Boykins. I thought that was amusing. So, also famous for being walked over by Allen Iverson.
That's right.
So, basically, his famous moments in NBA history are basically being embarrassed by short players.
And just for some context for anyone who missed that, it was a long time ago. Basically, Iverson did this crossover that was so bad that Lou fell onto the court. He shot over him, and then he walked over him as he was laying on the court on the way back down. That's what happened.
Yeah, Iverson was cold-blooded. I've got a lot of thoughts on this, and we'll see how long we go because I don't want to take us over an hour, and we're already at half an hour for the show, Brian. But what interested me, and we've talked this a lot, and this was something you said was on another show that you listened to. You said the True Hoop podcast?
Yeah, I listened to the True Hoop podcast. Amin El Hassan was hosting. They had Brian Windhorst, who's a Cavs insider, and they had another insider too. I forget who it was. We'll post the link though. But yeah, they were just kind of the title of it was something like going through how this firing went down, like what led up to it, what all the personalities were like, and yeah, that was it.
But what? So I think one of the points you said they made was, I don't know if they said it, but we said this a lot. Coaches, for the most part, are indistinguishable. I want to make sure I use the word indistinguishable because I'm not saying coaches don't matter. I'm just saying if you look at the crop of NBA coaches, most of them in terms of player development, most of them even in terms of the players they play, are going to follow very similar patterns. And part of the reason, by the way, for like the players they play is their GM. I looked at like George Karl with the Nuggets as one of my first articles, and basically the pattern I found was amount of money spent on the player directly correlated with how many minutes they got, and that's not surprising. Same is always true of rookies, right? When you draft a highly touted prospect, you're expecting that player to get more minutes than, say, TJ McConnell, a fantastic bench player. Although, this sounds mean, Brian, so sorry to get back on this tangent.
Okay.
I do the top 10 box scores every week. I've mentioned TJ McConnell a few times because according to the wins produced numbers, he's one of the best rookies this season. And I love the guy according to his box scores. I just watched Phoenix versus Philly, and it's just ugly ball. I mean,
he fails the eye test, right?
Oh, he failed. I mean, the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm not even convinced. This is always the joke, and so I want to stress that I'm not being serious, but it's close enough for me to make this hyperbolic statement. I don't even think they could beat an NCAA team. Oh my God, it was an ugly, ugly game. Anyway, but on that, note where coaches are kind of indistinguishable from each other, don't really matter in terms of the players they play, schemes they run, probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme that the Cavs lost David Blatt. And you were saying, why not spend the extra $3 million to keep LeBron James happy? And pre-show I commented to you, this basically proves that LeBron James' free market value is $50 million. The Cavs are showing they were willing to basically hit the luxury tax with Tristan Thompson to keep LeBron James happy. They're willing to fire David Blatt and basically shell out another $3 million on another coach to keep LeBron James happy. All that's proving is his free market value. And what's interesting to me is from kind of a does this make sense standpoint, I don't really like it. But at the same time, it's one of these areas where I feel the franchise is making a mistake, but it doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, it's interesting. I pretty much agree. I'm a little more in favor of the firing than you are. I just think like LeBron is your franchise, and yeah, you got to do what he says. And so, okay, again, we were talking about this a little bit pre-show too. It's being reported that LeBron did not ask to have him fired, that the owners basically looked at the situation in the locker room and said...
And sorry to cut in, another line that came up was one of the part owners, I forget the guy's name, I apologize for this, but one of the part owners of the Miami Heat has come forward and said LeBron James tried to get Spoelstra fired in Miami, and that was part of the reason he left. For the record, Miami, if that was the case, you were wrong. Sorry, anyway, but continue.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it. That it's been reported, that LeBron never respected Blatt since day one, and has just been doing his own thing, and listening to Lou instead of Blatt this whole time. And then, okay, let's bring up this this one article here. Let's see. No, that's the wrong one. Anyway, once I find this article, okay, so here we go. And again, this is Brian Windhorst, an ESPN insider, so I guess he's credible. But Cavaliers, quote-unquote, basically boycotted 29-point loss to Trailblazers. So what he's reporting here is that players got benched by David Blatt without any explanation or communication to anyone on the team at all. And they basically said, well, if you're not going to show us the respect to communicate with us, we're just going to boycott this game. So apparently his communication skills weren't that great, and he didn't have the respect of the team. So when you've gotten to that point where you can't even work together, really, you got to pick someone, right? And it's always going to be LeBron. So I don't really see how the Cavs owners had any choice here.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's really weird because some of the stuff bristles the wrong way with me, because one of David Blatt's kind of pedigrees, right, is that he played overseas a lot and coached overseas. And I've heard comments where he was saying he was used to the international game. And so, like, he would be much more vocal with refs during stuff. And with, some of his not teammates, but, some of the Cavs would basically laugh at him and say, like, why are you reacting so much? And same kind of notion, he would crack the whip a little more with the players, benching, when LeBron James was benched versus the Heat this season, that was baffling to me. I saw that happen and I went, this is really weird, and there's no way LeBron James is on board with it. So from that regard, it sounded like he had, we hear this term a lot in tech, the culture fit. And it always bristles me the wrong way, because what ends up happening when you kind of go with the culture fit is you end up with an office full of mid-20s white guys who basically want to have other mid-20s white guys, and you don't have other opinions. But as the coach of the Cavaliers is kind of a glorified position, because you pretty much have your game set in stone, play LeBron James lots of minutes, I don't really know what to say there. So like I said, it is one of those things where I read a great Dan Ariely article this week about Uber. And this funny notion that, okay, so the way Uber works, we talk about it being a little evil, but they respond to the market. So if you're trying to get a cab at, 8 p.m. when no one's out and it's a Wednesday and no one's doing anything, the cab's going to be a fair rate. But then if it's a Lakers game is getting out in the middle of downtown Los Angeles or wherever the Staples Center is, you're going to get charged a lot more. They're going to up the rate. And from an economic standpoint, this makes complete sense. But from kind of a fairness standpoint, it bristles the wrong way with customers. So it's the same way here, where basically I don't see anything wrong with the David Blatt firing if basically it was just to keep LeBron James happy. Spend $3 million to keep LeBron James around, because let's just be clear, LeBron James signed a 2-year deal, but only 1 year is guaranteed, and next season he can go elsewhere. So if you have any fear of LeBron James leaving next season over David Blatt, get rid of David Blatt. That's all I have to say to that. But it just doesn't quite sit super well with me for some of the things I said there.
Yeah.
And it is worth noting, though, that this has basically been the trend of the NBA. You should be slightly worried about trusting your franchise with a player. There's a great Mitch Hedberg quote that I don't quite know in its entirety, but he talks about how he likes doing comedy, and he's worked really good to be good at comedy. And then all of the people he talks to in the entertainment industry say, you're a really good comic. Well, can you write a script? Can you act? Can you, do these other things? And he says, it's so bizarre to him because he worked really good to be good at comedy, and then they want him to do stuff related to comedy. And his metaphor is, if he was a really good chef, it would be like asking him if he could farm. And I find that with star players, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson fall in this boat, they're really great players that have dedicated so much time to basketball. LeBron James has been playing basketball full time as a career since he was 18 years old at this point. And if you look at the Olympics and the offseason and all that and international play, he plays basketball nonstop. It is tempting to believe that all of that experience in basketball would make him smarter at coaching or GMing or whatever, because he's been around it. But he's been doing stuff related to that, but not that. And so I get a little nervous when you start trusting the franchise and players like that. Because as I mentioned, in Michael Jordan's career, if his front office had listened to him, he would not be Michael Jordan. I want that clear. If Michael Jordan's front offices had followed his advice, they would not have gotten the players that were required to make Michael Jordan the name he is now. So it's, but the same boat, in this case here specifically, I see no problem. So this is a complete nitpick on my part. It just, this, I'm going to use the famous word. I've already used the eye test against TJ McConnell. I'm going to use the smell test here. It doesn't pass the smell test, but the analytical side of me when I look at it basically goes, hey, it's a billionaire throwing $3 million away. What's the big deal?
Okay, so I've got two questions for you in relation to those comments. Number one is, maybe coaching internationally and coaching in the NBA aren't as different as being a chef and farming. But it was being reported that they're so different that Blatt was having a lot of trouble making the switch, and that was a big part of it. Number two, going back to what we were saying about what Coach Busek was saying on the show last week, she had that great answer about how, well, we spend the whole offseason gearing up to come up with our plan such that the plan makes sense and all the players will buy into it, and that getting the players to buy in and play hard on defense and all that is one of the most important jobs of the coach. And by all accounts, it wasn't just LeBron James. It was the entire team didn't respect him, except for maybe Dellavedova, who had gotten more minutes. And then just to finish up, also the media all disliked him. He's pretty much universally disliked, according to these insider reports. So I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, though, that's a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's rough to me is when you've got, doesn't fit in as a thing. It's always a little weird, but for a position that doesn't matter, I can't say much against it. So it's like that's all I got there is in this instance, it doesn't matter. In general, I'm kind of against that. But to that note, I do think he was set up to fail, and not through any fault of his own. He was signed on before LeBron James agreed to come back to Cleveland, and I think it's a fair bet to say it was not a given that LeBron James was going back to Cleveland. Remember, Dwayne Wade left $8 million on the table with the expectation that they were going to use that money to sign LeBron James back to the Heat. And then LeBron James didn't return. So even to the people in Miami, it wasn't clear that LeBron James was out. It's not like a Whiteside situation where basically they've got a very clear thing in front of them. It's give him the money and pray or he's gone. I mean, that's pretty much the situation for them now. So with that said, David Blatt was signed before LeBron James committed, which means their thought was we're going to have a rebuilding team. We're going to have all these young draft picks, and we're going to need someone that's going to crack the whip and buckle down on these young players and get them into shape. And we've talked about the 76ers where, everything goes wrong, and how can you expect players to develop there? So that's not a bad strategy, to be candid. But then he comes in and LeBron James comes and Kevin Love comes in. It's like, now you have a roster full of players that don't need development. You have a roster full of stars that kind of need ego juggling. This is one of those things I was really harsh on George Karl, and maybe it's just old age and the fact that he's not in Denver anymore. But I've softened a lot, and one of the reasons I've softened is I've said he had a locker room with Carmelo Anthony and Kenyon Martin and Allen Iverson for all of those years, and he managed to keep those egos in check. And that's an impressive feat. So to be fair on David Blatt, they basically hired him to be a developmental coach and then said, actually, we need a buddy coach for these star players. And that's exactly the wrong job to be hired for, right? And then additionally, I feel kind of bad because it sucks that, he was basically fired right before the All-Star game when he had been announced as the All-Star head coach. And so, I feel bad for him on that regard and don't think it was really fair to him. But also think, basically it's on the Cavaliers. They hired the wrong person for the job. To their credit, they weren't aware of what was going to happen. But let's also point this out. If you're a franchise that's hiring a coach that isn't a pedigree name, not sure if he's worth it, but Rick Carlisle is making $50 million over 7 years in Dallas. But if you're not a name, if you're a new coach, just give him a 1-year deal. Don't sign long-term deals. And this keeps happening. Tyronn Lue got a 3-year deal. If LeBron James and Kevin Love leave next season, He's going to get fired when they do poorly, and they're going to spend another $3 million. So I don't understand franchises wasting money on coaches.
I will agree with you there. It was definitely unfair to Blatt, even if it was the right call. He was set up to fail. He had no chance there, really.
Yeah, I mean,
But
as we mentioned.
Here's a good segue, though, to our All-Star section. I will say that bringing back Tristan Thompson hasn't just been, throwing a bone to LeBron. Thompson has been playing out of his mind and should be starting the All-Star game, in my opinion, alongside Whiteside.
You think Tristan Thompson?
Let's bring up those numbers, Dre, if you're ready to talk All-Stars. But why don't you give your own opening to that segment?
God. All right. Well, anyway, so the one topic I just want to get out there, and I honestly just kind of feel like howling at the moon, is I don't understand how Jimmy Butler's not in this game as a starter. It makes no fathomable sense. Obviously, we're going to say DeAndre Jordan is the best center in the NBA and belongs in the game, and people are going to say he doesn't score points, he's not a star, didn't play defense. I think all of that is crap, but at the same time, I'm going to go, I understand by conventional wisdom why DeAndre Jordan doesn't start the All-Star game. That said, Jimmy Butler is the second highest scoring guard in the East. He scored 40 points in a half, which broke a Michael Jordan record for the Bulls. He's in the third largest market in the NBA and the second largest market in the East. He leads his team in points. And he, like I said, I don't understand how this guy doesn't make the All-Star game. And I guess the point I was making there is, in one of the articles I wrote last week, I talked about why your All-Star rage is out. Your All-Star outrage is justified. So Patrick wrote a piece where he said, basically gave it two parts. He said, here are the players that belong in the All-Star game by our numbers. But he cushioned that by saying he gets that the All-Star game isn't about productivity and it's about fans and blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I didn't mean to be diminutive to Patrick there, actually. I agree with him, but I'm saying those, like he's saying the lines that people say that I agree with but don't like. Very similar to Blatt's Fired. But Jimmy Butler, if we were going to make a list of things that dictate All-Stars, big market, lots of points, franchise with a rabid fan base, he passes all of those. The Chicago Bulls lead the league in attendance this season. I don't understand how he's not in this game. And to me, if Jimmy Butler is not in the All-Star game this season, it proves to me that even the conventional metrics for voting in All-Star starters are broken. Because even by conventional, like one of the most surefire conventional wisdom hits in the All-Star game isn't starting the All-Star game. And that to me tells me, even if you're going to go, we're not looking for the most productive players, we're going for fan favorites, you missed. That's all I got.
Well, the good news is he will be in there almost 100%. Whatever coach, if it's not Blatt, ends up coaching that team, I'm sure we'll bring Jimmy Butler along.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's the coach's vote, and if you're an NBA coach and don't get that Jimmy Butler is just, a must in the All-Star game, I got nothing for you. Obviously, Draymond Green is in the same boat, that's all I got there.
So just real fast on Tristan Thompson, though, I have up now WP48 on Boxscoregeeks.com with the 450-minute floor, so we don't get any of these small sample size guys in there. And yeah, Hassan Whiteside and Tristan Thompson are the best per minute Eastern guys. Curry, Leonard, Westbrook, Jordan, Durant, and Paul are above them, but that's it. No one else from the East is above them.
Interesting.
Aaron Gordon from Orlando being number 3rd. He would be my small forward starter, maybe over LeBron. No, that's going too far, but
all right.
He's up there. But sorry, continue, Dre.
It is interesting with Tristan Thompson, by the way, that he isn't getting starters minutes. I mean, he got all the salary. He's playing great. I don't get it, but not much to say there. With the All-Star game, I was trying to think if there's anything else. I don't know if I have that much more outrage other than Jimmy Butler. I mean, obviously Draymond Green not starting is a big deal. I laid my case in this article that I would like people to read, just called "Why Your Outrage Is Justified," and a metaphor I said that I don't think quite landed because Andrew Sutton commented on it as I compared it to the Pepsi challenge back in the day for New Coke. The reason I brought this up is New Coke or Coca-Cola made a decision to change their recipe up on this test. And the test was a sip test. You give people a little sippy cup of Coke, you give them a little sippy cup of Pepsi, you have them take a sip of each side by side, you ask which do they prefer better, and they point at Pepsi. Now, the issue with this is that's not how you drink soda. You drink soda out of a can. You'll have the can in front of you. You can see the can. You'll have nostalgia. You might have a recipe you like. I'm sure that there are better recipes of chicken tikka masala than Sairam, the top-rated Indian restaurant in Appleton, makes. Let's give it a free shout out to that. But it's still my favorite because I eat there all the time. There's nostalgia related. So my point there was the test they used to ask customers what they wanted was not the right test. They thought that giving them a sip and saying, which do you prefer, was the right test. The real test would be like, send them home with a case of Coke for a week and say, how happy are you? And then send other customers home with a case of Pepsi for a week and say, how happy are you? And compare those numbers. So the All-Star game has this problem where the way they vote in players with hashtags on Twitter or with going to NBA.com and voting in a full 10 starters doesn't seem to work. And my basic argument is I don't think it's getting the players that fans want to see in the game. And if the goal of the All-Star game is ratings, I think that's a problem. That was pretty much all I wanted to say. And basically, I've got two sides to it. Like the fact that Draymond Green isn't starting, when I've got to argue more people would rather see like a Draymond Green versus LeBron showdown than watch Kobe Bryant huck up 20 shots. That's just me. And the fact that Jimmy Butler is in the game just proves to me that, the All-Star game isn't satisfying any of its criteria. And the reason I think it's important to look at production for a criteria is that they put that in the last CBA. The last CBA ties how much players can be paid on on extension deals from their rookie contract. It ties how much that they can get for that. And if you're going to do that, you are basically saying the All-Star game is a criteria of productivity, and that's just not the case.
So, okay, let's go to that scenario, though. And again, so this is where you really want me under the guillotine with the Warriors fans, Dre, is right here. I'm going to live up to that promise. Again, if you're looking by win production per minute here with a reasonable number of minutes played, even though Draymond Green has been playing lately, I looked at his, his running wins produced like we were looking at earlier for Cousins. When he went through that triple-double streak, he's been playing out of his mind. He's raised up his totals a lot for that. But he wasn't quite playing as well early in the year. If I'm going to just say by purely wins produced All-Stars, it's going to be Jordan, Durant, and Leonard in my front court. Green is fourth.
Now, to be fair, we can have an argument there, a very simple one that I have no problem with, which is to say, yes, I do like the filter Patrick Scott. So what we do is, as the season goes, Patrick ups this filter for a minimum number of minutes because, clearly a player can play 2 minutes and, make 2 shots and they're the best player in the NBA according to per minute numbers. I can still give credence to saying you want a starter. You want someone who's starting the games, who's playing lots of minutes. And even to that, your Tristan Thompson argument, he'd be out because he's not a starter. So I've got no complaints to that. And I mean, the point I'm going to put there is you're making an argument for production, which I'm fully behind. And we're arguing on 2 levels of that. But when you look at players like Kyrie Irving and Kobe Bryant that make it in, they are so far out, right? It's like a Monty Python thing. You count to 3, 5 is right out. Kyrie Irving and not LeBron James, Kobe Bryant have no business in the All-Star game. And I'm going to be mean. Kobe Bryant doesn't need another freaking pat on the back about how great he is in his last season. That sounds really mean and callous on my part. He has been patted on the back his entire career as being great. And I get that it's coming to an end. I've said before how painful it is to watch. He is basically following Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's path, where in his last season, he's a guy with a bristly personality. For all the credit he gets, I don't think that he is a well-liked personality, just like buddy off the court. That's the impression I get, especially with like how many teammates he's thrown under the bus. So on that note, all I can really say is I understand what's happening with him, and I don't have any empathy, even though I'm trying to have empathy, I don't, because I'm like, you've been patted on the back. You've been getting all D awards for years when you weren't at the same defensive level. You've been getting all-star ballots when you weren't. So I don't see a reason to add another season to this, and I would much rather have Draymond Green in the game.
That's fair, but I think at the beginning of that, you were kind of making a minutes argument, right? That maybe total wins produced might be better than per minute. Well, those 3 guys are still ahead of Draymond in total wins produced too. So
I've got no.
Okay,
I'm saying like I've got no
fair.
Complaints there. I mean, I'm saying like that's my personal preference. Like I think Draymond Green, from my perspective, being like the best team, leading the league in triple doubles, excitement. There's no reason for him not to be in the game, and that's.
If you're talking about fans and watchability, yeah, he should absolutely be starting. And again, all these guys will be in there. It's just a matter of who the starter is.
And like I said, I would have no complaints about the starter being whatever, except that the NBA tried to tie it, and then I'll be mean. anything in the NBA that requires a vote. This is coaches, this is fans, this is writers. I put no faith in. I'm those three groups as a any of those three groups as a whole. I have no faith in. There's just like what's the common idiom, like the wisdom of the crowd. I don't believe in the wisdom of the crowd on any of those three groups. Sorry.
You don't want to deregulate the stock market anytime soon, Dre?
No.
Okay, so here's a more interesting argument, though, is, okay, what I'm talking about now is just kind of, what is your body of work in the first half of the season? I think a more interesting question is, if, let's say you're trying to win the game as a coach, and all you care about is winning, then maybe Draymond Green enters the conversation. Maybe all these guys are such good scorers that you would want to have that defender and passer in there instead of Durant or Leonard. I don't know. That's a tougher question to me. Or maybe you bench Westbrook, put Leonard at shooting guard. Anyway, go ahead, Drew.
Oh, wow. Man, you're making me defend Westbrook? Damn. No.
Westbrook has had a great season. Okay, and here's one thing we haven't talked about yet. The fans did get this right. Westbrook and Curry, I think, have clearly been the best two guards in the first half of the West.
If Westbrook and I had, Patrick brought this up, that he always thought of Kobe Bryant as a shooting guard. It is worth noting that Bryant has basically been playing the small forward, the reason being that the Lakers are rebuilding and have drafted like a young guard, and Kobe's still around, but he still needs to start. So that's Kobe and the Lakers, the pinnacle of dysfunction. But, he was moved to forward for the balloting purposes. And, if he hadn't been, that would have been a travesty to me, because Curry and Westbrook to start the season were so obvious as starters from every conceivable thing that if one of them had been shoved out, I've been infuriated. But wasn't lucky for that, and I just get to be mad on behalf of DeAndre Jordan and Draymond Green and others. So I don't really have a soft landing for the All-Star thing, Brian. I mean, we've got 2 articles out of it. I got my Jimmy Butler rage out. I'd like to have more, but this, we've done this for a few years now, and you do it a couple seasons, and you just kind of, even if you get the anger, you just don't have as much steam because you yelled the year before, and you're like, all right.
I'll just say that while Jimmy Butler is a travesty, I think Jordan is even a bigger snub than Butler. He's playing really well this season.
Michael Jordan should be starting.
Michael Jordan, yeah.
You're going to have Kobe in there. Might as well have Michael Jordan. And then whoever wins, you decide that's the best shooting guard of all time. I like DeAndre Jordan from what we were just talking, like the test. Because I think a problem we have with polling when we ask people their opinion is we don't inflict any cost on them, right? When a fan is asked, who would you like to see in the All-Star game? If we said, you have to spend $0.25 to vote on who you want in the All-Star game, and you have to go to the All-Star game. Like, if you have to watch it and you have to pay for your vote. I imagine we'd get a different set of players than what we got. That's just my 2 cents. So, and if you had to pay for every single player, they might be more critical, because I think some players, right, they go to vote in LeBron James. They can't think of any other NBA players. They just vote in Kyrie Irving because they know him, because they watch LeBron James and he's on the same team. So to DeAndre Jordan, I'm offended that he's not in the All-Star game, but at the same point, in this offseason, 2 marquee franchises went after him hard and gave him a max contract. So for me, as long as the coaches get him in, I don't have as much outrage, and the reason is because I feel the offseason battle was won. When a in theory big analytics squad goes after him hard and offers him the max, I consider it a victory. So that's maybe why this season I'm a little less angry at DeAndre Jordan, because of the offseason.
That's fair.
All right. So anyway, that we did get a few comments on it, on the All-Star game, some opinions. Andrew Sutton thinks that
Twitch chat shout out.
Twitch, we do twitch.tv for the show, and there is a chat room. This show, I tried to keep myself from getting too bogged down, because I probably would have just started reading the comments talking to myself. But Andrew Sutton mentions that Giannis Antetokounmpo versus KD would be a fun match. Giano51 notes that that's a combined 2 miles of wingspan. I agree. Andrew Sutton, when I brought up, Michael Jordan versus Kobe, said, hey, kid's still around. Why not throw him into the mix too?
The one I want. I think Steve Nash, he's been coaching the Warriors this year. I'm ready for him to get added to the playoff roster and back up Steph Curry. That's going to happen. You heard it here first.
I had some Steve Nash Kerr Royal Rumble comparisons had we discussed that this show.
Oh,
And
good.
Andrew Sutton thinks Rondo should be getting some more love. I actually 100% agree, but not in a conference with Curry and Westbrook. But I will agree if they still, I don't think they still have this award. Andrew Sutton suggests comeback player of the year for Rondo. I agree. Probably, I could see him off the bench in the All-Star game. I'd like to see Rondo. He's been a joy in the last couple of games. He is the quote I keep using about Rajon Rondo is he is my favorite player. He is the most productive player in the NBA that can't shoot, which is impressive. Because I mean, even when people talk about Andre Drummond and DeAndre Jordan not being able to shoot, that's not really true, right? You look at their efficiency numbers, and they actually do. Andre Drummond's had a couple of bad games, but I believe even including those bad games, his true shooting is at least decent. Same with DeAndre Jordan. Rajon Rondo, his free throws are bad. His 2-point shooting is bad. His 3-point shooting is decent. What are you going to do?
Rondo should be a reserve for sure.
Okay, I'll agree. Rondo is a reserve. All right. Anyway, that has been our show. Let's go into shout-outs, Brian. I will let you go first. I'll go second, and that'll be our show.
Just one quick shout out. Brian Stork, who plays for the New England Patriots, after he was interviewed after they lost to your Broncos, Dre. Congrats on them going to the Super Bowl. Although you've got a Bills jersey on for those audio-only listeners. That's kind of interesting.
I'm impressed. Actually, can you read it? Because I know that it does say it. I'm impressed.
Yeah. But anyway, so he gave an interview that was being characterized as part Belichick, part Marshawn Lynch, and there's the tie in there. But, all the NFL fans have read about it by now, but if you missed that, you're not an NFL fan, but you are a fan of weird interviews, I recommend checking out that Brian Stork interview.
Well, we've had this discussion before where I love like good post-game interviews, so I'm going to have to, and I haven't checked it out yet, so I feel bad about that.
Yeah.
All right, so I got two sets of shout-outs. The first, obviously, thank you so much to Andrew Sutton and Jano51. You guys rock so much for commenting in the Twitch.tv. And Jano mentioned after I had stopped commenting that Rondo, I believe, is called the pizza guy, and that's because he did some commercials for the pizza guys while he was in Sacramento. So for me, or not Sacramento, when he was in Dallas,
Boston.
Maybe?
Oh, Dallas. Okay.
Maybe. Or actually,
those are the three teams he's played for.
I'm getting this completely wrong. Isaiah Thomas did some commercials for the pizza guy. Thank you. I just refreshed myself. When he was in Sacramento. I guess Rajon Rondo can be the new pizza guy. All right. Anyway. But thank you so much for the commenters on twitch.tv. We appreciate you watching live. Obviously, we do keep the recordings of the shows up, but live makes it fun. Additionally, I want to give a shout out to the Boxscore Geeks comment section. I joked on Twitter today. I try and do a contemporary piece every week on my top 10 box scores. Part of this is, if you look at page views, people are much more interested in what's going on now in the NBA than in the past. So I'm a big NBA history aficionado, but at the same time, when I write an article about, the 1974 Bucks, I don't know why I'd write about that, but, no one's going to read it. Whereas if I write that, Dwight Howard is better than DeMarcus Cousins right now, which isn't really true, people will read. So I do that, and I put that, I make the most contemporary thinking topic I can, which is the top 10 box scores of the week. And of course, this week, the comment section devolved, and actually I'll say evolved, I'm going to use the word evolved, into a discussion about Sid Moncrief being like one of the best shooting guards and underappreciated guards in NBA history. So that's why I love the NBA Geeks, or the Boxscore Geeks, formerly NBA Geeks. That's why I love the Boxscore Geeks comment section, because of stuff like that. As I mentioned, any other blog, I would have shut down the comment section long ago, except we get into discussions like Wilt versus Bill Russell or Sid Crosby. So thanks so much for that. Other shout out is to comedian Hari Kondabolu, who I got to see live for the second time in Madison, Wisconsin last week. Was freaking awesome. He's great. He's super friendly. Got to talk to him after the show, bought a poster from him. The fun thing, my little anecdote here is, I mentioned that I liked seeing him on the show at midnight, and he told me he was going to be on At Midnight this upcoming Monday. He was on At Midnight last night. I'll put the link for that. You should watch it. It's hilarious. And of course, the comedy show, I did this weird thing where I said, awesome, I'll tweet about it. And after I was like, me and my 4,000 fans are going to tweet about you on At Midnight. And then I did tweet about it today. I said, Hari Kondabolu on At Midnight might be like the best show this year, possibly of all time. was trying to be slightly hyperbolic and funny, and then like was like felt really awkward after I posted that, and I was like, it's too late. Like if this makes any sense, in the world of sitcoms, you say something awkward and you keep trying to dig yourself out, and it gets more and more awkward. So I just didn't say anything after it. But I got to be an awkward fan to Hari Kondabolu, who is one of the most hilarious stand-up comedians and one of the best At Midnight guests. I won't give any spoilers, but if you're a fan of his and like At Midnight, you should check that out. So those are my shout outs, Brian. And with that, I'll end the show. This has been the Boxscore Geeks Show. If you didn't find us through our site, we are on boxscoregeeks.com. You can find our iTunes show on iTunes as well as Stitcher. It's the Boxscore Geeks Show. We go live every week, twitch.tv/nerd numbers, usually Tuesday or Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we kind of vary this up based on our schedule availability, so you'll have to follow myself, Nerd Numbers, my normal co-host, Patrick Minton, who is NBA Geek on Twitter, or our producer, Brian Foster, Boxscore Brian on Twitter, to find out the exact time. If you missed the live show and want to see the video, you can find that on YouTube with channel Nerd Numbers. Also, if you have any good box scores and you think I should put them in my weekly top 10 list, you can tweet them at me at #BSG Top 10. With that, we'll see you next week.